Today, we're talking about something that gets women heated online, and that is, are women's standards too high? But I want to take it in a different direction because I actually think we're missing the point. We're asking the wrong question. And before we go further, let me get this out of the way right now. I am in no way telling women to lower their standards. Welcome to the Secret Formula of Femininity for women who want to live a more feminine, fun, and fabulous life. I'm Dr. Nicole Monteiro, your host on this weekly journey to unlocking your inner radiance, nurturing fulfilling relationships, and becoming the best version of yourself. Welcome back to the #1 podcast for relationships and femininity. I am your host and guide on this journey to tapping into your feminine essence, Dr. Nicole. I'm going to start today by asking you to choose between two men. I just want you to listen, and I want you to tell me who you would choose after hearing all of the attributes. Man number one, now listen up. He's 6'2", successful in his career. He makes great money as a result. Very charismatic, well-traveled, definitely has a passport, dresses well, like really, really well put together. And when you meet him, that chemistry is on fire. It's immediate. You look at him from across the hall or wherever it is that you see him across the room, and you're thinking, okay, yes. But there is one problem as you get to know him. He's not consistent. He's not great with difficult conversations. So he's avoiding. He's like, all right, next time. Or you could tell he just doesn't want to go there. Sometimes he is super attentive to you, like he's all in. Other times he seems distracted, like he's into someone else or definitely not into you. But when it's good, it's like it's amazing. It feels good, right? It's that chemistry we talked about before. But when it's not good, you feel down in the dumps, like you go from up in the mountaintop down to the valley. So that's man number one. Now listen to man number two, or man B. He's attractive, but maybe he wasn't immediately your type like that first one. He is successful, but his career is not as impressive on paper. He has his own metrics of success, and he is successful, but it's not the same as man number A. He's not 6'2", but he's not short. He's 5'9". And ladies, I know I lost some of you because if you don't hear six pack, six figures, and 6 feet, then you're out of there. So he's 5'9". But when we go beyond all of that, listen to how he communicates. He is consistent. He calls when he says he's going to call. He texts. He responds back. I mean, he's not like on desperate mode, but he is definitely responsive. He has his own set of friends and guys and circles that he hangs out with. He respects your boundaries. When you say you're not comfortable with something or you want to talk about something, he's all ears and he's all in. He's definitely financially responsible. His numbers may not be the same on the spreadsheet as the first man, but he's super responsible. And when there's conflict, he doesn't shrink away. He's not avoiding it. He's like leaning in. And from the looks of things and the way he's showing up, he wants the kind of relationship that you say you want. A commitment, growing together, building together, mutual respect. But that immediate, when you look across the room, oh my God, where have you been all my life? He doesn't necessarily have that, at least not initially for you. So my question is, who do you choose? And which of those list of qualities that you heard me describe are standards and which ones are preferences? Because today we're talking about something that gets women heated online, and that is, are women's standards too high? But I want to take it in a different direction because I actually think we're missing the point. We're asking the wrong question. And before we go further, let me get this out of the way right now. I am in no way telling women to lower their standards. I'm a psychologist. I'm a coach. I spend time with women talking about boundaries and self-esteem and self-worth and how not to abandon yourself. So, me sitting up here and telling women to abandon the qualities that are actually necessary for a healthy relationship, that would make no sense at all. And it's not what I believe at all. But I am going to challenge us because I have to be honest. I talk to a lot of women, but I see couples, I see men, and I just see what's going on. And there's a lot more to the picture than just women's standards are too high. There is definitely a difference between having high standards and treating every single preference like a standard. And I think that's why the debates get so heated because social media, especially, has blurred those two things so much, standards and preferences, to where we think they are one and the same. The goal is not to lower your standards, no way at all. The goal is to get much better at identifying which things even deserve to be standards. We're putting everything and the kitchen sink in there and we're calling it a standard. And that's where we need to break some things down. So let's do a little case study. I want to tell you about Monique. I love Monique. She was in one of my coaching programs. And we laugh and talk a lot because she looks back like, okay, doc, I had a lot going on. So Monique, when she first came into the Boundaries to Bliss Society, she was 41 years old, very attractive, very educated. I mean, seriously, she had so much going on. She had a great career. She's an owner. She owns her own home, beautiful car. She takes exquisite vacations. That's why I mentioned the passport in the beginning. She has been to therapy and she has done a lot of work on herself. And the case of Monique is like I see with a lot of women. They do all the things first and then they come and say, okay, now I'm looking for a relationship. So that's another story for another day because we really have to learn to start multitasking. You don't have to become perfect and then look for a relationship. But let's talk about Monique. She was 41 years old. She had done so much work on herself and she was ready to get married. And she had a list, as you would imagine someone who was accomplished at her age and stage in life. You would imagine like she wouldn't just be there like, I don't know. That would be a little bit odd, right? She had a list, and I love lists. I just came from the grocery store and I didn't just go in there. I had a list. I do not believe in going places and just having no clue what I'm looking for. So that clarity is so good. It's actually something that I recommend and talk about a lot. She was like, on her list, let's just go through some of the things. He needed to be emotionally intelligent. He needed to want marriage, be intentional, marriage minded. She wanted him to share her core values, of course, be financially stable because she had done a lot to bring herself to that stage in life. Educated, she had a master's degree. Ambitious, she found herself to be a high achieving, ambitious woman. At least 6 feet tall, make at least what she makes and preferably more. No young children. She was okay with if he had been married before, divorced, or in another relationship and had children, but no young children. Someone who liked to travel, a good relationship with his family, not, a bunch of drama and trauma or unresolved trauma, and physically fit. Also, ideally, she put an asterisk like, I want him to not just be financially stable or successful, but have credentials, certain career or professional credentials. So I know a lot of y'all are like, okay, doc, what's wrong? Like, sounds reasonable to me. Like, especially she came in strong with the emotional intelligence and, you know, positive relationship with his family and so forth. So, yeah, you're going to be like, okay, that sounds reasonable to me. And I'm not going to say whether it is or isn't. I just want us to go with this. I'm not going to tell you yet. But the question that I would ask Monique when we were in our live group coaching session was, why this list? Why each and everything on this list? And it's not because I'm of the mind that she's asking for too much. I will never tell a woman or a person that what they are asking for is too much. That's not for me to determine. But I wanted to understand what each item on that list really meant. Was it something that she had really thought about and it was going to contribute to the relationship she saw for herself? Or was this like things that have we hear on social media or people say, or just a grab bag of things where we're like, you know what, put that in the bag too? Okay, so as we talk further with Monique, I ended up talking to her about buckets and how you want to think about all of these things on the list, not just as one group of things that are equal, but categories, right? Our minds break things down much better and clearer when we put them into categories. So the first bucket that we talked about was the essential bucket. These are the things that you just cannot build a healthy relationship with if you don't have these things. These are things like character. Are they emotionally available? Respect, like respect, how do they respect and show you? Are you guys compatible in your values? Honesty. And I was just looking at some of the data from the Singles in America survey that just came out 2025, and the qualities that people who are dating and looking for a relationship name have a lot to do with character, empathy, kindness, all of these things that go into emotional intelligence. And about 83%, so a vast majority, said that dishonesty would be a deal breaker. Dishonesty, disloyalty, like those things that just say, hey, you're not respecting me and you're not respecting your word. So if you think about that essentials bucket, definitely you could see things like honesty and shared values, core values, goals in life, and so forth. So these are the things that I would be extremely careful about compromising or trying to be flexible with, because you just aren't going to have the kind of relationship. If you're looking for a healthy, fulfilling relationship, there's certain things that you just need. It's just like if you're baking a cake, you can't substitute too many different things. There's some things you can substitute or they can be kind of equivalent, but there's certain core ingredients that you just have to have. So then we talked about bucket number two. This is the important bucket. So we talked about the essential bucket. The important bucket is these are things that you want. They matter. They matter a lot. They are important, but they may show up differently than you had initially envisioned or the way you had pictured. So they might be things that you could be a little flexible in terms of how you recognize them. So for example, financial stability, right? That's on the list. That's important. It doesn't necessarily mean that this person has to make 200,000 a year, 100,000 a year even. It could mean that he earns 80 or 90,000 in a career or line of work that he's been building and focusing on, but he has amazing credit. He doesn't have a whole bunch of consumer debt. He invests consistently. He understands finances and the stock market or other ways of establishing financial stability. And he has great financial habits. Some of them might be so good that you're told no, like, babe, we can't do this because it's not fitting in line with the financial plan. Okay, so the distinction is not that whether or not you take financial stability off the list completely, but it could be that it doesn't look exactly like you imagined it to look. Listen, I have been interviewing so many successful entrepreneurs about their relationships. And when I talk to the men who are seven, eight, some of them nine-figure earners right now, they didn't start off like that when they first got with their wives. No, a couple of them, especially CJ talked about in the interview in the previous episode, that his wife had to hold it down a little bit, right? He told her, I'm going to retire you, but she had to hold it down. I interviewed a couple married for more than 35 years, Sheila and Garrick. Their episode, Sheila and Garrick, they will be featured in the next episode, in next week's episode. They talked about how she had to hold it down. The wife had to hold it down for a time period because life is going to life. Life is going to be going up and down. But one thing that was key in all of those scenarios is that the man had discipline, drive, a level of being able to focus, establish goals, and still be a leader and still be a provider within the relationship. So that financial stability thing, I'm hearing people put an exact like dollar amount or figure to it. And I think that that can actually cut you off from possibly being retired in the future because your man has a plan, an actionable plan that's going to come to fruition down the line. But yes, that financial stability could look like a lower number, but excellent financial habits, no debt, good credit, and so forth. So that's a key distinction. So the third bucket is the preferences, right? We did the essentials, we did what's important. A preference, they are allowed. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a preference. There's certain foods I prefer, there's certain stores I prefer. I prefer to go to Whole Foods each and every time, like not just for the products, but the shopping experience, right? We all have preferences, they are allowed. That's what makes life sweet, and that's what makes things unique and different. Preferences are like, okay, I love tall men. I love men with facial hair and a beard. I like somebody who has, I want someone who has a graduate degree in a certain field because I respect that field. You can prefer somebody who loves to travel and has been to more than, more countries than you have, or they've been to every continent. Having a preference doesn't make you shallow, it just makes you uniquely you. There's nothing wrong with it. But the issue is preferences and requirements are not automatically the same thing. And so when we have our lists, we're throwing in preferences. It's like we have the core ingredients and then we're throwing in some seasonings, or you know how you go get some ice cream and you want those sprinkles? Okay, the sprinkles are a preference, but an ice cream cone is still an ice cream cone without those sprinkles, right? So I've heard people even put preferences at the top of the list. And then they let some of the essentials or the importance fly by the wayside. So that fourth bucket is the fantasy. Like this is where you have fun. Like we all have fantasies. Men have fantasies, women have fantasies. It's my soulmate will just know what I need. I don't have to work on communication. Like we're just going to communicate through telepathy or osmosis. Like it's just going to soak in because they will just know. And that is going to show that they are my soulmate. When I hear women say this, I'm like, you're looking for a relationship. You're looking for a husband, not a mind reader, not a psychic, not someone who majored in you from birth. Another thing I hear is like, it shouldn't be so hard. If we are really compatible, we should never argue. We should see eye to eye on everything. Or we should be one. Everything that I like, he should like too, or he should want to do it because, hey, he's there to please me. As they say, happy wife, happy life. And I've heard a lot of disagreement about that. And I would agree with some of the pushback because it's not only about you, baby girl, right? So it's okay to have that fantasy, but when it becomes a thing that you think is a standard, my soulmate will just know everything that I need. We will never argue or disagree. That is a fantasy. And it doesn't mean that you're asking for too much. I told you before, I'm not going to sit here and tell a woman you are asking for too much. I will ask you to self examine and to really take a step back. So, a fantasy isn't about wanting too much, but sometimes it's about expecting relationships to operate in a way that's unrealistic and actually in a way that is at the antithesis of how healthy relationships operate. And a lot of us get these fantasies because we never saw the real thing in person, or we got caught up in the movies and the Disney, and or now we don't really watch Disney, but we watch social media. We watch people's highlight reels and we look at relationship goals. And so we start to develop this fantasy. And the fantasy items, because they're so appealing and they're just so like romantic and sexy and appealing, we will put those at the top of the list, even above the essentials and the important ones. So now that we have our four buckets, let's go back to Monique, right? There was man A and man B. And if you remember, the first man was like, it was that fantasy man, six figures, six pack, 6 feet tall, charismatic, life of the party. Like, just name any of your A-list like actors or characters you would see in a movie. leading men, and that would be who man A is. So with Monique, when she came in the coaching program, she was always somehow torn between these two types of people, a type A and a type B. And the type A man was always having a lot of the fantasy items. He checked those boxes, absolutely. A lot of the preference items, absolutely. But those essentials that we said you should not actually be flexible and compromising on, he often fell short of them. So in this case, the man A, like, he's not emotionally available. He avoids conflict. Again, that's an essential thing, that emotional intelligence. He's inconsistent and he's not really clear and upfront about what he wants. He's like, oh, well, let's take it where it goes and let's see. And that wasn't the kind of thing that Monique wanted. Now, man B, the second type of man, again, it wasn't that he didn't have any items that would be a preference. He was attractive, but he wasn't her usual type. She had in her mind a certain height, a certain type of body build. Okay. And I'm not attacking anybody who's under 6 feet tall. It is what it is, right? And I always tell ladies that I talk to, I'm like, it's always you short ones, you 5 foot ones and 5'3". I'm 5'3", but y'all always talking about some 6 feet tall, right? So, but with man B, he earned less than she did, but he was extremely financially responsible. He was building things up with his business, with his career. He had a trajectory and a destination that he was focused on. He wanted marriage. He would communicate well, be consistent, and keep his word. And he didn't avoid disagreement. Like, that's the thing that we're seeing a lot now, that people are complaining that a lot of men and women are emotionally immature. They can't handle disagreement, they can't handle conflict. Well, in the case of Monique, whenever she would meet a man B who didn't have all of her preferences, he had most of what she needed in bucket one and bucket two, which was the essentials and the important items for a healthy, fulfilling relationship. And the thing about that type B man, Monique would run into, he would be genuinely interested and curious about her. Like, he wanted to know who she was as a person. He wasn't just looking at a bunch of checks boxes either. Like, okay, she needs to be 36, 24, 36 as far as measurements. She needs to have this kind of look or that type of thing. Like, he was genuinely interested in getting to know her. Now, you tell me, what type of man do you think Monique would just feel like she had the best chemistry with, and that would determine her decisions? Yes, of course, type A. Like, that was her fantasy man. So whenever she ran up against him, or whenever there was a type A man versus a type B man, she would always go for type A, but then she would feel disappointed. And it was funny because when we did this exercise to really dig into the pattern with her, it wasn't to shame her for it. And she didn't feel ashamed. She actually started laughing, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And we even went back and forth as far as the finance part. And we were like, no, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with having a preference. In fact, when we were looking at some of the dating preferences data, we found that, yes, about 14% of people overall said they did not want to date someone who made less than them. They wanted someone who was equal. But it was 3 times as many women as men who were the ones who said no, they could not have someone who made less than them. And so it wasn't that Monique was alone in that. A lot of women feel that way. But what I'm asking all of us to do is to put it into a perspective of, what does that mean? Are we looking at a dollar amount today? Are we looking at it in the context of a lot of other factors and qualities and even future growth and earning potential, right? Now, I could have gone through all of this with Monique and just simply said, okay, that's the problem. Solution is start choosing man B. Like, that's it. Stop going for this charismatic guy. But that's really not how psychology works. That's not how what we choose in relationships works. We really need to not just diagnose the problem, but really get underneath and understand why. And so as I talked to Monique, I wanted to understand why man A would feel more compelling. Maybe she was drawn to the status and that made her feel safer and more secure. Maybe it was about flexing in front of her friends. And some of this stuff could go back to childhood. Maybe she never felt safe and provided for. So she wanted an outward display where everybody could say, oh, she's taken care of. That made her feel that status would make her feel not just more valued, but safer. Also, maybe she had relationships with women or girls growing up where it was competitive and she felt like she didn't measure up. So she was going for the man with the status primarily. Maybe attraction, when she felt physically attracted to another man, it made her feel even more attractive. Maybe attraction meant something more than just being attracted. Maybe she saw it as a reflection of her own desirability. And maybe that played into her identity, like how she identified. Does she identify as a woman who can pull in the top men? Is that what's important to her? Does she identify as someone who is of a certain station in life and she can't afford for her identity to be threatened if she were to go with for someone that she felt either her family, her friends, or other people wouldn't admire, like someone, the type A man, the charismatic man? It could be related to attachment patterns. Maybe the man who's a little more standoffish is familiar to avoidant men or attachment figures in her life growing up. So even though it didn't feel good, it feels familiar to her. So there could be so many factors, and we actually ended up digging into a lot of those with Monique. And maybe that type A man represents something really deep and core to her. Maybe that type of man represents something she has worked so hard to believe about herself, that she's valuable. The society sees her as valuable, right? You see where I'm going with this. Sometimes we're overcompensating for where we think we had been lacking and maybe are still lacking. And we are looking for a partner to validate that because it's so core to how we want to see ourselves. And I always say sometimes when we're overcompensating, that means we're not so secure in that identity that we want to have about ourselves. So maybe man B, the second type of man, offers the relationship that Monique says she wants. He has those essentials, those important things. But it's just that he doesn't match the picture. Maybe she expects him to come wrapped up in this fantasy packaging that she has built up in her head. And maybe she expects the man who will provide the relationship she wants to come wrapped in a very specific package. And if he doesn't, then she's ready to throw away the whole thing. It's so important that we understand that sometimes the man who matches our picture isn't the man who matches our needs. Let me say that again. Sometimes the person who matches our picture, our fantasy, is not the person who matches our needs. And this relates so beautifully to the conversation I had last week with CJ and Dave. Dave said something that I keep thinking about, and I'm glad he said it so clearly. He said his wife checked a lot of boxes, and he was very clear. He said, not all. She checked a lot of them, and he married her 6 months later. He wasn't waiting for all of the boxes to be checked. He did not want to lose the woman who checked the core boxes that he was looking for. So, this absolutely doesn't mean that boxes and lists and things that we require don't matter. It just means that all of the boxes don't deserve equal weight. They are not all the same. And we've got to get better as women at determining which boxes deserve the most weight. I need you to understand that this is not about settling. Settling is abandoning a standard, and we need standards. Flexibility, on the other hand, is reconsidering a preference that we've given too much weight to. And those are not the same thing. Settling is, I need honesty, but he lies. And I'm just going to overlook that because I'm 42. I'm scared. This is my last chance. And I don't want to risk not meeting someone else. Flexibility, on the other hand, is I've always thought I would be with a professional man, a doctor, a lawyer. This man, on the other hand, isn't a professional in that sense. He owns a successful business, but he's intellectually curious and we share a lot of common values and interests together. And those are two different things. That settling is not the same as the flexibility that will get you closer to your dream person. Now, for all of the men who are watching or listening, before you ramp up your cheering section and send this to every single woman you know, we need to be balanced in this whole standards versus preferences conversation. Because what I hear from men at times is unrealistic as well. You want this accomplished, independent woman, but she needs to be always available, never challenge you. She has to be extremely beautiful, but you don't want her getting attention. If she does, then you're upset and you're taking it out on her. You need her to be super confident, but you want her to hide that confidence in certain settings and situations. So, unrealistic expectations are not just a woman's problem, they go both ways. This is actually a human problem. We tend to look outwardly so far away from us and ignore what's right in front of us that may actually be good for us in the long run. So, this goes for everyone. The question that you need to be asking is, am I asking for qualities that ultimately help create a healthy relationship? Or am I asking for qualities that are just creating my fantasy partner, my top fantasy imagined partner in my head? Because those might end up being two different lists of qualities. And as you go back to looking at those standards, we want to also dig a little bit deeper. A question I want you to ask yourself as you look at your standards is, what is this standard protecting? Because it could be a defense against something. So if you want education, if that's the standard you have, he has to have a graduate degree. Well, why is that? It could be that you want to make sure you're intellectually compatible with someone. Education is a certain orientation towards life. Okay, that's great. Or it could be that you're afraid that you might outgrow him or that he might resent you. And that's a different conversation. I'm not saying that's not important, but you want to interrogate what these standards are truly about. When it comes to education and a certain dollar amount, you also might want to ask why. It could be that you want a certain lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it could also be a fear underneath that because I've heard people say, well, I watched my mother struggle financially. I vowed that I would never put myself in that situation. So in that case, there's a lot of history underneath that standard. And that history could be driving you to overlook a situation that could ultimately be healthy and fulfilling for you. And sometimes when you interrogate something and think about it, it just is what it is. You might be like, well, Dr. Nicole, I just like tall men. I heard somebody say, well, I like to climb trees. I heard a lady say that. And that is fine. Not everything is about childhood trauma or some deeper core issue. It's absolutely okay to have those preferences thrown in there and just know the difference between if you have some standards that are being driven by fears or a lack mindset or a scarcity mindset. And if you just said, you know what, I have these fantasy items that I want to throw in there and it just is what it is, there's nothing wrong with that. The key is knowing what's underneath your standards and your preferences. Okay, so I want us to try something. I love doing things in the moment. So I want you to press pause, get a piece of paper, and I want you to write down your top 10 qualities that you have for the person you're looking for. And besides those qualities, I want you to label them. Are these essentials? What I want you to essentially put them in buckets. Does this quality go in the essential bucket, the important bucket, the preference bucket, or the fantasy bucket? And then ask yourself, if you met a person who really lived up to almost every E, almost every I, so every essential, almost every important, a lot of your P's, and none of your F's, those fantasies, would you still recognize that person as a good potential partner? Or would you say because none of the F's or fantasies are on the buck or on the list, then no, that's not at all somebody who's a potential good partner. And that's the kind of reflection that I really want women to do before they get so emotionally attached or drawn in to situationships and things like that. And that is why I created the Damsel Me Please journal. And there are so many prompts in here, 30 days of prompts that help you get to that understanding. One of the prompts is, what are 5 things I absolutely have to experience in a healthy relationship, and why does each one matter? That's the level of reflection that I wanted to put in the Damsel Me Please journal. Now let's go back to Monique. You're probably wondering what ended up happening with Monique. Did she resolve this issue? Did she end up magically becoming more attracted to and choosing the type B man? Well, no, it didn't quite happen like that. Life is not like that. But a lot changed for Monique, her perspective, and as a result, her list. And it wasn't that she was lowering her standards, but she was understanding. She got clearer about them. Some things got moved up on her list, some things got moved down, some things actually got eliminated. She became so clear. And as she continued to put herself out there, she was able to reflect on her list with such clarity that she could tell from the beginning, okay, is this something that I need to put to the wayside? Is this repeating a pattern that's going to lead to more heartbreak and so forth? So I'm expecting nothing but good things for Monique, because it's not about the fairy tale ending in the fantasy man. It's about the clarity that will help you be more discerning about the men that you come in contact with. Now, I love that we went through all of this, our buckets, what's a preference, what's a standard. Next week, we're taking it out of the hypothetical. I got to interview a couple who were college sweethearts, married for 35 years, Garrick and Sheila. Their story is so amazing, but I think you'll recognize a lot of what was essential and important in choosing a lifelong partner, and what things really didn't matter as they raised a family, built careers, built businesses, and have gone through life's ups and downs. And there's something about talking to people who have sustained a marriage for that long that really puts into perspective what matters. When you look back 35 years, are some of those things that you thought were important going to be as important, especially as you go through life's trials and tribulations? So trust me, you do not want to miss next week's episode. And if you want to get your copy of the Damsel Me Please journal, the link is in the show notes. And if you want to know more about my inner circle, the Boundaries to Bliss Society, where women learn to have healthy boundaries, lean into their femininity, and create healthy, fulfilling relationships, I will leave a link to learn more about it in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget, if you haven't already, to subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you don't miss any content, and share this with a woman who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay discerning, stay soft, stay feminine. I'm Dr. Nicole.